Hi, everyone. Welcome back to dinanddaf. This is Elana Stein Hain. This week, we are going to talk about Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yishmael as very significant early schools of thought that differed with each other on really important things, including how Torah should be read and interpreted, but even what Jewish chosenness means, how Torah and God relate to human beings and to the Jewish people. And we're going to see that today. Why? Because the Gemara in Sanhedrin on Daf Nun Aleph Amud Bet, when recording a debate between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yishmael, asking, should the regular capital punishment of chenek, asphyxiation, apply to a bat Kohen who is married and committed adultery? Or should she get sreifa, the way that an arusa, a woman who was betrothed to a bat Kohen, gets? Machloka between them rests on a vav. Rabbi Akiva says, because it says uvat kohen ki techel liznot, it's not just bat kohen who is an arusa, betrothed, but even bat kohen who is nesua, who is a married woman, who also gets the more machmir capital punishment of sreifa rather than the usual asphyxiation. And Rabbi Yishmael essentially looks at Rabbi Akiva incredulously and says, because of a vav, we're going to give a woman sreifa. Now, this is indicative of a much deeper machloket between the two of them and their schools of thought. And I want to go into those schools of thought with you today. We're going to look at three different issues between the two of them that I think are all related. On the face of it, these issues are different. The first is, how do you read Torah? The second is, what's the Yetzer Hara? And the third is, what does Jewish chosenness mean? But at the end of the day, what we're actually going to see is that they all connect in some way to the question of human authority versus divine or Torah authority. They all connect in some way to who's in the center. Is it the people or is it the laws? Let's take a look. So let's start with their hermeneutical arguments, or their arguments about how to read. So this is not the only place where Rabbi Yishmael basically turns to Rabbi Akiva and says, no way, no how. We have another example that is a machloket between them in interpreting psukim in Bamidbar Perek Tedvav. And the psukim are talking about somebody who blasphemes on purpose. Very simple. This person, doesn't matter if they are a citizen, it doesn't matter if they are a fellow traveler, they are going to get karet. Their nefesh is going to be cut off. But then the next pasuk seems to use an interesting terminology for karet. Ki dvar Hashem baza, because they spurn God's word. Ve'ed mitzvotav hefer, they've nullified God's command. Hi karet ti karet hanefesh hahi avonaba. That nefesh will surely be cut off. Right? Hi karet ti karet, a doubling of language. It holds its own guilt. So what do you do with the doubling of the language? I would even say, between us, what would you do with the tripling of the language? It said karet before, and now it's saying doubling hi karet ti karet. So that's exactly the conversation that's going to happen between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yishmael in the Sifrei and Bamidbar. Now, I want to point out that a lot of places where we find Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yishmael pitted against each other are in the corpora called Midrash Halakha. Midrash Halakha is Tanaitic Midrash that follows the Torah pasuk by pasuk and gives mostly legal glosses. So we have on Shmot, Mechilta de Rabbi Yishmael and Mechilta de Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, two separate midrashim. We have on Vayikra, the Sifra, and we have on Bamidbar and Devarim, the Sifrei. In the 19th century, Reb David Tzvi Hoffman noticed that there's different language, different tools being used by different schools, different associations of different rabbis, and recognized that maybe what we're looking at is a collection that's made of two threads. One thread is the school of Rabbi Yishmael, one thread is the school of Rabbi Akiva, right? So we'll go into who's given credit for which, but for now, let's just stick with the fact that the Sifrei is actually going to quote both of them here. Hi karet ti karet, this language of doubling karet, doubling of being cut off. Karet balam hazeh, ti karet balam haba, right? Divrei Rabbi Akiva. Classic Rabbi Akiva, double language, we are going to interpret it. So they'll be cut off in this world, meaning they'll get capital punishment, and they'll be cut off in the next world. They won't get olam haba. Amarle Rabbi Yishmael says, what do you mean? Come on. Lefi shehu omer ti karet hanefesh hahi. Once it says the person will be cut off. Shomea ani b'shalosh kritot. Am I supposed to think there are three karets because there's one in the previous pasuk, and then he karet to karet is 2 and 3. B'shalosh olamot, is it supposed to mean that there are three worlds in which you're cut off? Clearly, he is mocking Rabbi Akiva, or at least taking it ad absurdum. What is that language of hikaret tikaret? It's just idiomatic. It's human phrasing. The Torah speaks in human phraseology. This is a major sticking point between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yishmael. We might call it pshat versus drash, right? The plain meaning of the words. We might call it something deeper, which is not just do words read in the way that any other human words would read, but even the question of accessibility and rationality within religion versus mysticism going beyond something that is beyond the rational and the metaphysical, that sometimes is expressed in the way that they argue about these things. So, for example, in the Mechilta of Rabbi Yishmael, where it talks about B'chol ha'am ro'im et hakolot ve'et halapidim, at Ma'amad Har Sinai, everyone can see the sounds and can also see the torches. What do you mean they can see the sounds? So, of course, Ro'in et hanireh v'shomin et hanishma. Rabbi Yishmael says perfectly rational. No. They saw what you could see, namely the lapidot, the torches, and they heard what you can hear, right? Namely the sounds. Meaning it's not, let's not read more into it. Read it as it would make sense rationally. Rabbi Akiva Omer, nope, Ro'in v'shomin et hanireh. Because says, nope, they could see and they could hear that which is usually only seen, right? In other versions, you'd have they could hear and see that which is normally only heard. But either way, much more metaphysical, much more mysterious. And I think those two things go together, right? Does the Torah speak in fundamentally human terms, or is the Torah speaking in fundamentally mysterious terms like an extra vav can mean something that you didn't know it meant based on the pshat? So that's level one. Level two, the way these two schools talk about the Yetzer Hara. Now, the way these two schools talk about the Yetzer Hara, in some ways, is asking the question of how does the Torah relate to nagging doubts, or anywhere on the spectrum from nagging doubts to outright rebellion. And it's interesting to see that the sources that are attributed to Rabbi Akiva make the Yetzer Hara out to be more of like nagging doubts, human doubts. And the sources in Rabbi Yishmael make it out to be more renegade, rebellious. So let's take a look. So first, we have the pasuk or the psukim about planting trees. Okay, Vayikra Yutet. V'chi tavo el haaretz unitatem kol eitz ma'achal v'araltem orlato et piryo shalosh shanim yelachem arilim lo yechel. So when you come to the land and you plant a tree, the first 3 years you're not allowed to eat from it. Orla, right? Ubashana revit, and in the 4th year, kol piryo kodesh ilulim lashem. In the 4th year, its fruit is kadosh to God. So basically, it can either be eaten in Yerushalayim, or it has to be, it needs a pidyon, needs to be redeemed by money. But in the 4th year, it's still not fully free to you to eat anywhere and everywhere. If you want to eat it, you have to go to Yerushalayim, or you have to redeem it with money. Only uvashana chamishit, only in the 5th year, tochlu et piryo, you will eat its fruit. And look at this, lo sif lachem tvuato, so that its crop will be increased. Ani Hashem Elokechem, I am Hashem your God. What is that addition of so that your crop will be increased? I'm keeping the mitzvah of Orla and the 4th year, which is called Neta Revai. I'm keeping those mitzvot in order for my crop to get increased. So look at what the Sifra in Kedoshim tells us. And by the way, the Sifra is a general corpus. It's a general literature that Rav David Tzvi Hoffman thought was Akivan. It's a little confusing because in a few minutes, we're going to see a little collection that was put into the Sifra that we think is Yishmaelian. So a little confusing, but that's life. So let's take a look at Rabbi Akiva. Uvashana chamishit tochlu piryo, in the 5th year, you're going to eat its fruit, and I'm going to say freely. Rabbi Akiva Omer dibra Torah keneged hayetzer. The Torah, when it adds the words lo sif lachem tvuato, to add to the yield of the crop, it's speaking to your yetzer. Notice he doesn't call it a yetzer hara. Shelo yeh adam omer, a person shouldn't say, Harei arba shanim ani mitzter bo chinam. I have been working on this tree for 4 years for no reason. And this is why it promises, well, its yield will be more, right? So we look at the Yetzer, we say, normal human concern, nagging human doubt. This is not good for business. Why am I doing this Orla thing? Don't worry. You have a promise. The Torah promises you something. Similar example, also attributed to Rabbi Akiva. We have a pasuk that describes when you are going on Aliyah L'Regel, don't worry, no one's going to take your land. Ki orish goyim mipanecha, v'irchavti et gvulecha. When I remove the nations from before you in Eretz Israel, and I widen your borders, v'lo yachmod ish et artzecha. No one is going to covet your land. Ba'alotcha le'ra'ot et pnei Hashem Elokecha shalosh pa'amim b'shana. When you go up on Aliyah L'Regel. Truth is, Aliyah L'Regel, not such a practical idea. You're going to go, you're going to leave all your stuff behind. Doesn't really sound like a great idea. Somebody might pick it up. So the Mechilta de Rabbi Yishmael, which, the Mechilta de Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, which is generally attributed to the school of Rabbi Akiva, as opposed to the Mechilta de Rabbi Yishmael, which, surprise, surprise, is generally attributed to the school of Rabbi Yishmael. So Mechilta de Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai says, Ki orish goyim mipanecha, lo yachmod ish et artzecha, right? When I have people come out from before you and nobody, don't worry, will covet your land when you go on Aliyah L'Regel, Deber Torah Keneged Yetzer. The Torah is speaking to the Yetzer. Again, not called Yetzer Hara. Shelo Yomru Yisrael. The Jews shouldn't say, Hey, anu manichim artzenu vatenu stodenu kramenu. How are we leaving all our land behind? V'olin L'Regel and going pilgrimage to Yerushalayim. Shema yavo achirim v'yeshvu b'makodotenu. Maybe somebody's going to come and squat on our land and take it. Therefore, God serves as a guarantor. Don't worry, no one is going to covet your land. Right? So again, the Torah looks at legitimate human doubt and says, don't worry, I've got you. Right? That already is very interesting to me, that you would think about it as the Torah trying to take care of human doubt or address itself to human doubt. Very, very different from the way that the school of Rabbi Yishmael presents the Yetzer, or shall I say, the Yetzer Hara. So one example, Lo taseh pesel, you can't make a graven image, v'chol tmuna, or any image. Lo titach lecha asherah, you can't plant an avodah zarah tree. Kol eitz, nothing wood, ve'evan maskit, nothing that's a stone that's been, figured into something. Elohei chesef, can't be silver gods, etc. Kol kach radaf hakatuv achar Yetzer Hara, scripture says in so many different ways that you can't do avodah zarah, because it is chasing, not the Yetzer Hara, your evil inclination, shelo litain lo makom limtso lo amtalat heter, so that it does not give your Yetzer Hara the opportunity to try to find an excuse. What is your Yetzer Hara here? It's not proper doubts of human beings where they say, look, I've been working on this tree for 4 years. Can't I just eat from it without having to go to Yerushalayim? Like, can't I just eat from it already? Don't worry, this is going to be good for you. Here, the Yetzer Hara is presented as something that is trying to get you to do something bad. It's trying to find the loophole to paganism. And so the Torah doesn't talk to it. The Torah talks at it. The Torah shuts it down, pursues it, and says in so many ways, not just a God of wood, not just a God of stone, not just a God of silver, none of it. You can't do any of it. No, similar kind of thing comes up in what is known to us as a very famous distinction between mishpatim and chukim, right? Mishpatim are mitzvot that we understand. Chukim are mitzvot that we don't understand the reasons for them. Mechilta de arayot, which confusing, it's attributed to Rabbi Yishmael, but it comes up within the Sifra in general, which is attributed to Rabbi Akiva. Mechilta de arayot, like what we had before, in a different place, says, actually, let's read the pasuk. Et mishpatai ta'asu, ve'et chukotai tishmuru lalachat behem, ani Hashem Elokecha. Follow my mishpatim, follow my chukim, to walk in them, I am the Lord your God. So the Mechilta D'Arayo tells us, again, attributed to Rabbi Yishmael, even though it's a collection within the Sifra, which is attributed to Rabbi Akiva. Et mishpatai ta'asu, do my mishpatim, ela hadvarim haktuvim b'Torah. These are the things that are written in the Torah, she'ilu lo nichtavu, that even if they hadn't been written, Bidin hayalakotvan would have made perfect logical sense, rational sense to write them. Kigon, lot, stealing, varayot, licentious behavior, avodat elilim, paganism, kilalat Hashem, cursing God, shvichut damim, murder. Sheilu lo nechtavu, bidin hayalakotvan. If they hadn't been written in the Torah, we rationally would have said these should be written. But what about the chukim at the end of the pasuk? Ve'elu sheyetzer hara meshiv alehem. These are the ones that the yetzer hara challenges. Ve'umot ha'olam of de elilim meshivim alehem. And the nations of the world who are pagan, they challenge. So who's the yetzer hara like? Like a pagan, right? Kigon, like achilat chazir. Why don't you eat swine? Levishat kilayim. Why don't you mix wool and linen? Chalitzat yivama. Why do you do that weird thing with the shoe when you're not going to marry your sister-in-law who's a widow? V'tarata mitzora, that strange thing with the birds in the purification rite of somebody who has that skin disease. Seir mishtaleach, the scapegoat. Sheyetzer meshiv alehem ve'umot ha'olam avdei elilim meshivim alehem. Your yetzer hara and pagans, they're the ones who challenge these things. Your yetzer hara is no good. We do not like your yetzer hara. The Torah is not going to talk to your yetzer hara. Instead, what is it going to say? Talmud lomar. Therefore, the Torah says, Ani Hashem, right? It says at the end of the pasuk, right? I am God, Ani Hashem Elokechem. And what is the lashon of chukim? Chakakti. I've engraved this. I've made these laws in a Torah she'ela shivalem. You can't challenge them. You're not allowed, right? Again, do we talk to the Yetzer? We have a dialogue with the Yetzer. You have legitimate doubts. Nope. It's the Yetzer is bad. It's trying to get you to do bad things. He's trying to undermine your relationship with Hashem. And we're going to just shut it down. That's what we're going to do, right? Chukim milashon chakakti. I engraved them. Tough luck. There's nothing to do, right? Now, I think there's a connection between these two kinds of machlokot, between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yishmael. I think for the person who says the Torah speaks in fundamentally mysterious ways, and we are going to have to darshan what the vav is, it actually gives human beings a lot of authority, to be honest. And I think similarly, if you look at the Torah talking to the Yetzer, not the Yetzer hara, but talking to the Yetzer and say, I get you have issues, you have questions, it means that the human being is placed centrally to this relationship. I think those are very similar. Whereas the person, ironically, who says the Torah speaks in Lashon B'nai Adam, what he's trying to say is the Torah is very rational, straightforward, tells you like it is. And he also says, don't try to get out of it. God says jump, you say how high, and that's the way that it goes, right? So it's interesting, I think, the way these two kinds of machlokot go together. I'm not sure that I would have put them together ahead of time, but once I see them, I see something here. I think the third place where they have a big machloket, which I think is very interesting, is in what Jewish chosenness means. And again, the conversation ends up being, do you put people in the center or do you put the law in the center, right? So we have Mishnah in Avot. Rabbi Akiva used to say, Chaviv Adam shenivra b'tzelem, human beings are beloved, that they were created in God's image. And we were even told that human beings are even told this, shenemar b'tzelem u'kimasat adam. God made human beings in God's image. But then keep going within in this concentric circle. Chavivim Yisrael shenekru banim l'makom. Yisrael is beloved because they're not just made in God's image. They don't just resemble God, so to speak. They're God's children. And moreover, they're told that they are. Parshat Re'eh says, you are Hashem's children. Not only that, but just like a parent gives their child a toy, a parent gives their child a gift, the Jewish people are beloved because they were given the precious kli, which is the Torah, meaning we were given it. It is ours. Not only that, they were told that they were given this. Even, and it's the implement with which the world was created, which is for another time. As it says, I have given you a good lekach, not lesson, but thing, right? I've given you a good thing. Don't leave it. What does it tell you? The Torah belongs to the people. The people are in the middle. Bnei Israel are in the middle, and the Torah belongs to us. Contrast that with the Sifrei and Bamidbar, which is attributed to Rabbi Yishmael's school. Chavivim Yisrael, the Jewish people are beloved. We are called priests. We have a job to do. It's not that we're called children, this intimate, da, da, da. So what we were doing is we were comparing Rabbi Akiva's perspective on Bechirat Yisrael where the Jewish people are in the center, they're Banim LaHashem, and they're given the Torah, as though we hold the Torah. And the Sifrei Bamidbar, where the school of Rabbi Yishmael says, Chavivim Yisrael, Kishehu Mechanan Ein Mechanan El B'Kohanim. The Jewish people are beloved because God calls us priests. Shneimar, as it says, V'atem Kohanei Hashem Tikareu, you'll be called the priests of Hashem. Mishartei Elokeinu Ye'emer Lechem, it'll be said to you that you are the servers of God. Chel Goyim Tochelu, you will get the wealth of nations. Ulichodam Tityamaru, and you will get their kavod, you will get their honor. Now, what does it mean to be a Kohen rather than being a child, right? I assume child is more intimate, whereas Kohen focuses more on your job. And in fact, that's kind of the way this midrash continues. Chavivim Kohanim, Keshehu Mechanan Ein Mechanan El Malachei Sharet. Kohanim are beloved. They are called Malachim. But wait a second. Called Malachim, Shneimar, as it says, we have a pasuk in Malachi, Ki siftei kohen yishmeru da'at v'torah yivakshu mipihu ki malach Hashem tzvakotu. Right? The lips of the Kohen guard knowledge, and people will ask for teaching from their lips because they are God's angel. Bizman she'torah yotza mipi hareu k'melach sharet. Actually, what that means is when Torah is coming out of the Kohen's mouth, meaning people can ask for Torah from them, then they're like the angels. If not, and if not, they're like an animal that doesn't recognize its owner, which is harkening back to the beginning of Yeshayahu, where God says, Yada shor konehu v'chamor ebus ba'alav, right? Animals know who their owners are. I think it's Va'ami lo yada. Let me look it up. Let's not get it bad. Let's not get it wrong. One second. I got ahead of myself here. This is my problem, right? You get excited about a pasuk, but let's get it right, especially now that I quoted the beginning of the pasuk. Goes like this. Let's get it right. Yada shor koneu v'chamor bus ba'alav. Ox knows its owner. Donkey knows its masters. Yisrael lo yada ami lo hitbonan. Right? Israel doesn't know, and my people haven't really understood. Right? So it's harkening back. Do you want to be like a malach, or do you want to be like an animal? What that's basically saying is, if you are going to keep Torah and you can find Torah from a person's mouth, then that person is going to be like a malach. And if not, we have a bit of a problem, right? It seems a little less unconditional than the sense of being banim laHashem. And then it ends with what's really in the center. Chavivat Torah, shekeshesha'al David melech Yisrael lo sha'al ela Torah. Torah is beloved. It's in the center because when King David asked for something, he asked for Torah. Shneimar, tov ata umitiv lamdeni chukecha. God, you are good and you do good. Teach me your laws, right? So here, instead of saying we, the Jewish people, are given the charm to implement, we're given Torah, it's essentially Torah is really in the center and we ask for Torah, right? We're looking for Torah. And if we keep Torah, then we are like Malachim. We are the Kohanim who are doing their jobs. And if not, we have a problem. Now, it's interesting to consider. I think this is also related to the overarching theme of Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yishmael's schools, because do you put the people in the center where they're banim and it's ultimately some sort of, unconditional relationship? Or do you put the Torah in the center where the Torah says jump, you say how high, you do it, good, you don't do it, you have a problem. Now, we can, of course, discern that both of these threads run through rabbinic Jewish thought. And you can even say Rabbi Akiva probably won in terms of the way that Chazal read Torah. They darshan every vav, they darshan every et, they write that kind of thing. And Rabbi Yishmael maybe had a little more, the school of Rabbi Yishmael had a little more impact in terms of the Yetzer Hara. In terms of chosenness, I think we have both of them, because when we talk about Jewish peoplehood beyond the bounds of people who observe Torah and mitzvot, we're talking about a kind of Akivan Jewish peoplehood. But when we talk about what it is that makes us a people, it's the fact that we are chayavim b'Torah. It's the fact that we were given Torah. So in some ways, that's the Yishmaelian version. But either way, I hope this was kind of a nice zoom out on the balcony views of Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yishmael? How much are you putting people in the center? How much are you thinking about Torah as mysterious? How much are you giving authority to people? How much are you looking at Torah as rational? How much are you looking at Torah as setting a bar that you have to reach rather than it reaching down to you, you reaching up to it? Thanks for learning with me.